Time Reviews. We back with another one. This is House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 3, The Burning Mill. So the episode first of all, let's start out with the shits, okay? So it start out with these two sets of youngins. You got the Brackens and the Blackwoods, and they end up getting into a little squabble about the separation in land, far as what family owns what. And of course, just by chance, both sides are literally have pledged their allegiance to each side of the coins. They go back and forth about who's the real king, who's the real heir to the throne, blah 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 blah. They get into a little argument, and then they get into a shoving match, and that shoving match ends up being like a bloodbath, because in the next scene right after that, you see the boy who pretty much sparked the whole physical beef between the two sets of kids. You see him with a blade in his neck, so he's done. Scene after that, you got Rhaenyra, Rhaenys, Jacaerys, and all of them basically burying Eric, and she's saying, Rhaenyra's saying that she can't blame Eric for sticking to his oath, far as how he ended his own life honorably because of how he felt about his brother being the one who came there to attack them. And the thing about Jacaerys is, one thing about him is he's a feisty little dude. He wants to just get out there and get into everything, and to go to war. He just wants to get on his dragon and go to war. That's all he wants to do. Rhaenys, of course, who was the aunt, the older white-haired aunt, the queen who never was, she ends up telling Rhaenys, she feels the only way that they can probably solve this issue is if she talks to Alicent, and she's like, well, look, Alicent is in Queen's Landing while her son pretty much sits on my throne as the fake king, and you think that I'm going to be able to sit down and talk to her? And look at the shit that she's done, basically sending Eric to come in here and kill me. She's like, okay, but does that make her any better or any worse than you, who sat there and basically gave Daemon the okay to go kill a kid? I said, well, with her saying that, I mean, she's not wrong either, because like I said, with or without Rhaenyra basically saying, okay, Daemon, you can do that, or no, Daemon, don't do that, either way, it was going to fall back on her. It was going to be on her one way or another, so it didn't matter whether she gave the okay or not. Next scene, you got Kristen Cole, and he's preparing for his first day as the Hand. It's his first day, but the thing is, the biggest thing that he has to deal with is the fact that he sent Eric out there on a fool's errand, and it pretty much backfired. So you got Aegon, Alicent, and Kristen Cole basically going back and forth at the small council meeting, and I just think it's ironic that he would even pick Kristen Cole even after everything that happened, and after he fired his grandfather. And that's what Rhaenys said. Rhaenys said that if Otto Hightower was still in play, none of this would have happened, for real. Now, one thing that I like that Alicent said in that small council meeting is that she felt like the decision to send Eric out there was rash on Kristen Cole's part, and nobody else seemed to disagree or agree with her. They just kind of all sat there, and I'm just like, what part of that did y'all feel like was okay? Seeing you got Rhaenyra and Masara talking to each other about how Masara basically turned around and told what she saw versus running off and just worrying about herself, which I said is usually different for her because she's very much worried about self, So now Rhaenyra sees her. It's no way she can't see her. So she ends up telling her basically she knows the ins and outs of the Red Keep. So she's saying look, I can be a valuable asset to you if you let me. She wants to punish the Hightowers for what they did to her. But here's the thing. You can say that, but you were still part of the ploy that allowed them to push Rhaenyra out the throne. No matter what you say now, I would still be looking at her like she's a little I don't know. Right, and Rhaenyra said the same. Right, Rhaenyra basically said the same thing. She said, "Don't take my kindness for weakness." Basically, baby, I'm doing you a solid right now, but don't don't think that I don't remember what you've done or who you are. Like, and the next thing you got Damon, and he's supposed to be going to Hearn Hall to take over. But the thing about it is, it ain't nothing going on at Hearn Hall. You going there to rob some people and take over some shit that ain't got nothing. They ain't got nothing. They ain't got no resources or nothing. So you came there, and now you basically, if you're gonna take over, you're gonna basically have to rebuild that town that they now live in. One thing I like that Allison kind of did was she kind of put her brother in the mix, and she basically paired Kristen with her brother. And I don't know if that was her way of having eyes and ears on everything, or thinking that maybe she can't trust Kristen Cole 100%, even though she's sleeping with him. I think she think that having her brother there is like, it's an inside man, definitely an inside man. So I see Allison's play. Of course, the brother don't really see it for Kristen Cole, because he like, nigga, you basically took my dad's job, basically, but I'm gonna let it slide, and I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna have your back because that's what my sister asked. Now, I've been watching Game of Thrones, like the franchise, for a while, and the hardest hand pendant I've ever seen is the one that Kristen Cole wears. Like, it's not even like the pin with the hand and shit. It's giving very much a chain of hands that goes around his arm and connects around the neck part. That shit is tough. And they got like so much tension between them, Allison and Kristen Cole, and I just think, like, how do y'all figure people don't see how y'all act with each other? And he basically is telling her he love her, and I'm just like, bro, you need to relax. She's not that girl. She's all about political gain. And granted, the brother definitely caught on to them two. In that scene, he could definitely see that they got something going on with them. So you're caught, Allison. Very much caught. On their way out of King's Landing, you see like the crows like picking at the rat catchers. Like, damn, like, ugh. Like, I'm talking about picking Cheese's eyes out, like, basically. In the next scene, you got Rhaenyra's small council, and Rhaenys comes in and she tells her, like, there's been basically no sightings of the Greens. Like, you see no dragons, no ships, no anything. And, one of the dudes on her council basically tells her, like, we need to strike now, because if we don't, we pretty much gonna be open, And then they end up asking about Daemon, and my thing is, Daemon ain't reporting back to nobody. Who is he supposed to be reporting back to? Who did they think he was gonna report back to? This man wants to send dragons, and Rhaenyra is basically like, listen, if we send the dragons, we are literally, it's just gonna be too much, like, because she's already seen what Dragons versus Dragons did to her family already. It sparked all of this as is. So she doesn't want to do Dragons versus Dragons because it's just gonna be ugly, and then it's gonna have the people thinking that the dragons can't be trusted. So I see why she's basically saying, like, no dragons. So she's willing to go to the Vale and then, make a couple moves up north. And the fact that Rhaenys had to tell these niggas off because they thought that they was going to sit there and belittle Rhaenyra in her own small council was bonkers to me. Bonkers. So Rhaenyra agrees to send her kids to the Vale just to get them out of harm's way. Like, honestly, she's not a bad mother, but she knows that if she dies, she at least wants her heirs to be safe. So she sends Rhaena and her heirs to the Vale and gives her a couple of dragon eggs to basically, like, all right, cool. Like, this is our bargain with them. We're going to go ahead and trade off these dragon eggs to, this is our compensation for keeping you safe. Rhaena's basically looking at it like, damn, that's all y'all got for me? Like, she like, okay, just because I'm not a dragon rider, like, y'all feel like y'all don't have nothing else better for me to do? And I mean, we know that Baylor is the real badass, so we're not worried. I mean, if her character development is going to come, it's going to come. But, like, baby, you ain't had a dragon yet. Like, it is what it is. And the next scene, you got Allison and Helena talking, and Helena says how she feels sad about Jacaerys. No, you don't. And then she says, well, like, people die all the time. And then she's like, well, especially the babies. And I'm just like, are you sad, or are you just kind of like convincing yourself to be okay with the situation? Which one is it? Because Allison, I need you to realize that your daughter never really cared that her son is dead now. She doesn't care. And then they discussing what happened in the last episode where she basically almost had a panic attack because she didn't know how to deal with the public's outcry to her for her losing her son. And it's the fact that they even have to have this conversation about her learning and knowing what it is to grieve over the loss, like to grieve over the loss of her son is weird. And Helena hit Allison with the "I forgive you," and she's like, "What? I forgive you, right? I forgive you for all the bullshit and crazy shit you done, like, or basically put me through." Allison looking at her, and she don't say nothing, but it's like you know exactly what she's saying. I forgive you for literally making me marry my brother, having that kid with him, starting this war, and then having me have to end up sacrificing one of my kids in the process. Yes, I forgive you. Saying you got Littlefoot basically in the room while Aegon is getting styled for his new armor, which is made out of Valyrian steel. Now, the thing they say about it is they say it's like the sharpest and the strongest shit, so he might very well have the best armor out of everybody. So of course he's feeling himself, and that right there alone will probably make a person like him want to go to war. Like, oh, I got armor too now. Oh yeah, I'm definitely prepared to go to war. So Littlefoot ends up telling him, like, basically like, okay, the people in the streets then already heard that you sent your forces out to go to war. Now they're also hearing that you're supposed to be going out there with them. Now, why would he be okay with that? Just the same thing I keep saying with Rhaenyra. Y'all are the hierarchy. Y'all shouldn't be putting yourselves out there to die or risking the chance of dying because you think that you should be the one being on the front lines of this weird ass war. Now here's my thing. I feel like Littlefoot telling him that is basically him putting him in the middle of some shit that he ain't got no business being in. He's a child. Now what's funny is Aegon does see Littlefoot more than his father ever did because they end up having a conversation, and he says to him, like, my father said he never had a need for a master of whispers, and you know, I feel different. Like I'm convinced that you have somewhat usefulness to me. And I mean, this could be true. I always felt like Littlefinger, he was pretty resourceful. He wasn't like the best character, but he always was onto his shit. Like, he always knew what was up. He always knew what the plan was. You got to give him that. I felt like they had a conversation in this bar between these characters, these merchants, and you know, it's one of them conversations where you would think it has no meaning, but then when you look back and you hear some of the names and some of the houses that they ended up speaking on, you're like, ooh, I remember that name and I remember that house from Game of Thrones. So they sitting in this bar and they talking, and then they end up bringing up Dorne. And if you remember Dorne, it was like that was the place that Daenerys ended up going to when she was on her journeys on her way to the Red Keep. So that'd be just like, I guess that's little Easter eggs that they try to, you know. So this whole scene was meant to show off Aegon's I guess show off his power and his swag, because he ends up going to the brothel and making a whole mockery out of Aemon. And my thing is, one thing about Aemon is he don't forget shit. So for you to go in there and tease him because he's not fucking the lady and all they're doing is talking is crazy, because I mean, he's got one. Where's yours? Like, and then to do it in front of a room of people. If you thought that Aemon was going to let that shit slide, bro, you're dumb. Like, Aegon, you're dumb for thinking that Aemon would let that slide. Like, no. Next thing you're back at Dragonstone or whatever, and you see Rhaenyra, and she's sitting in, her Red Keep. And the thing about it is, she's sad because she's there alone, and she don't have her kids, she don't have Daemon, but she can't do shit either. She wants, like I said, she wants so bad to be involved in the war itself. Is very odd to me. I would pretty much want to stay safe if I was the king. Like, I don't know, whatever. And in the midst of her doing all of that, she ends up running across like a note that Allison wrote her when they were kids, and I'm just like, well, you far from those days now. Of course, Aegon sent Kristen Cole and them out on voyage or whatever, and you got Kristen Cole and Allison brother, and they on horseback or whatever, and they stop on this patch of grass or whatever, and they're talking. If you remember, Rhaenyra sent Baylor out to look to see who was making moves. Now, the first thing that happens is Kristen Cole realizes that there's a whole fucking dragon because they're exposed, and Baylor is like above them, but she sees them, so she starts moving in on them. First of all, I don't even know how the fuck she saw them that high up on the dragon for her to be flying down, basically scaring the shit out of Kristen Cole and them. I'd have burnt them up. Here's the thing: if you was gonna do all of that, why not just burn them up? You did all of that, chasing them down on the dragon, scaring them, and didn't burn them. You should have burnt them. Because like I said, I don't like Kristen Cole. I really wonder, by the end of this season, is there any way he could redeem himself? And the only way they were able to get away just now was because they went into the woods. And because the dragon is so big, it's no way. They got lucky that time. Even though she wasn't supposed to do that, they definitely got lucky. But again, she should have fucking Jakar's their asses, and then they would have been good. Baylor gets back to Dragonstone, and she tell Rhaenyra, like, look, I seen them. It's like half a dozen of them. Kristen Cole involved. I seen them. I could have got them. She like, look, girl, I told your ass not to engage in the first place, even though I wish she didn't. Listen to her, Rhaenyra. I wish she would have engaged. Rhaenyra's small council is telling her, listen, you need to bust a move. And again, like I said, she's not listening to them about going to Rook's Rest. Like, she's not. Like, Daemon is in Harrenhal. Listen, Daemon is not going to report. He's not going to report in. So you can't expect that. All you can do is hope that Daemon will come back, say that he has an army, and say that he's willing to help Rhaenyra still take the throne. Because if not, what is Daemon there for? What is Daemon there for? One thing about Daemon this season is this seems to be a full season of self-reflection. Like he's having all of these weird, I don't know if I want to call them flashbacks or prophecies or whatever he's having, and all of them pertain to Rhaenyra, and I think that's just showing you that he's conflicted with his loyalty to her. And then he walks into this room and he sees young Rhaenyra, and she's stitching up the throat of the kid that Daemon basically got killed, and this is all got to be like hitting Daemon at one time. Like, you pretty much wish that you could have killed her as a kid, and now you're doing crazy shit to protect her honor, when all in all, you genuinely don't even really bang with the idea of her being queen anyway. So, I don't know. He needs to get the hell out of Harrenhal, though. Especially with this weird-ass witch-looking lady looking at him, too. Miss Rivers. Excuse me. So, Rhaenyra goes to Mysaria and basically asks her, what do you know about the movements of Alicent? Like, basically, do you know her normal routine? Do you know her schedule? So, Mysaria's like, look, I can get a message to her, shit like that. So Rhaenyra comes up with the idea of her going herself, her sneaking into the Red Keep herself and having a conversation with Alicent. All these weird ass plans coming up, like between the plan last episode from Kristen Cole thinking that having Eric dress up as his twin and go to kill Rhaenyra was going to be a good plan. This ain't even no better, because think about the fact of if she goes there, they capture her, then what do they do with her? Like what do they do with her? So she sneaks into King's Landing. Now, the one thing she did is she covered that white hair up. She didn't pull a Daemon. Like, how you going to walk through a town supposed to be on a covert mission and you're walking around with your white hair? She did bring a Kingsguard because she's going to need one. She ends up meeting up with Alicent in the temple. They end up chit-chatting about, like, everything that's going on. And Alicent's basically telling her, like, look, we too far gone, basically, walking this back. Like, like your father picked my son on his deathbed. It is what it is. And he ended up mentioning the story of Ice and Fire, and the whole thing about Aegon the Conqueror. And Alicent's telling her like, yeah, he said that. And Rhaenyra looks at her like, baby, that's not what you think it is. Like, that's not a story that says that your son should be the king. That's a future story. Like, that's literally the story of Jon Snow in the actual Game of Thrones. And for you to think that him saying that to you meant that your son Aegon, no, he didn't mean that Aegon. That's the problem with these families. If y'all stop naming people the same names, people wouldn't have these situations where they sitting there looking dumb like Alicent was when Rhaenyra told her that basically, I'm still telling you that your son isn't the heir to the throne. Now, the craziest part is, if Rhaenyra wanted to do some motherfucking damage, she could have, because she was literally right there in like arm's reach and could have stabbed Alicent and didn't. And the fact that Alicent didn't scream tells me that Alicent is considering like that all of this could be for naught. It really could. It probably is, but again, like I said, if she would have did a little bit more research, she wouldn't have assumed that story about Ice and Fire had anything to do with her son. That's all I'm gonna say. And that's pretty much what Rhaenyra sat down and told her. And the fact that Rhaenyra got out of there unscathed, unshackled, unsnatched up was just beyond me, because I really assumed Alicent was gonna snitch, but she a real one because she didn't. And that shows me that there's a little bit of hope in there for her. Like we can see a little bit of change, but I don't know. And I mean, that's pretty much the episode. Like, they didn't really go into much. That's because the 4th episode is like really action packed, so they had to give you somewhat of like a little weird lead up to it. I enjoyed it. Just make sure y'all like, comment, and subscribe. HighTimez out.